Sultanate. Top Kapi Palace. Third Courtyard. Beyond the Gate of Felicity is the third courtyard, also called the Inner Palace, which is the heart of the palace, where the Sultan spent his days outside the harem. It is a lush garden surrounded by the hall of the privy chamber occupied by the palace officials, the treasury, which contains some of the most important treasures of the Ottoman age, including the Ottoman miniatures, the sacred truss, the harem and some pavilions, with the library of Ahmed III in the center. Entry to the third courtyard was strictly regulated and off-limits to outsiders. The third courtyard is surrounded by the quarters of the Agas, pages, boys in the service of the Sultan. They were taught the arts, such as music, painting and calligraphy. The best could become Hazodali Aga, keepers of the holy relics of the Prophet and personal servants of the Sultan, or even become officers or high-ranking officials. The layout of the third courtyard was established by Mehmet II. Its size is roughly comparable to the second courtyard. The rigid layout did not allow for any great changes. While Mehmet II would not sleep in the harem, successive sultans after him became more secluded and moved to the more intimate fourth courtyard and the harem section. The Hunernam miniature from 1584 shows the third courtyard and the surrounding outer gardens as it must have appeared following its completion under Mehmet II. It also shows at the bottom the Sultan in what looks like a short pavilion, either holding audience or being entertained by courtiers. Third courtyard. Audience chamber. The audience chamber, also known as audience hall or chamber of petitions, is right behind the Gate of Felicity to hide a view towards the third courtyard. This square building is an Ottoman kiosk, surrounded by a colonnade of 22 columns, supporting the large roof with hanging eaves. Inside is the main throne room with a dome and two smaller adjacent rooms. This audience hall was also called Inner Council Hall, in contrast to the outer Imperial Council Hall in the second courtyard. It is an old building, dating from the 15th century, and further decorated under Suleiman I. Here the Sultan would sit on the canopied throne and personally receive the viziers, officials and foreign ambassadors who presented themselves. The viziers came here to present their individual reports to the Sultan. Depending on their performance and reports, the Sultan showed his pleasure by showering them with gifts and high offices, or in the worst case having them strangled by deaf-mute eunuchs. The chamber was thus a place that officials reporting to the Sultan entered without knowing if they would leave it again alive. The present throne in the form of a baldachin was made by order of Mehmet III. On the lacquered ceiling of the throne, studded with jewels, are foliage patterns accompanied by the depiction of the fight of a dragon, symbol of power, with Simorg, a mythical bird. On the throne there is a cover made of several pieces of brocade on which emerald and ruby plaques and pearls are sewn. The ceiling of the chamber was painted in ultramarine blue and studded with golden stars. The tiles that lined the walls were also blue, white and turquoise. The chamber was further decorated with precious carpets and pillows. This was to impress the visitors and hold them in awe of the power and presence of the Sultan. The chamber was renovated in 1723 by Sultan Ahmed III and rebuilt in its present form after it was destroyed by fire in 1856 during the rule of Abdulmajid I. Today's interior therefore is very different from how it appeared after completion. 2 doors in front led out into a porch, another one to the back. The 2 doors in front were for visitors while the third one was for the Sultan himself. The embossed inscriptions at the main visitor's door, having the form of the Sultan's monogram and containing laudatory words for Sultan Abdulmajid I, date from 1856. The main door is surmounted by an embossed Bismillah, the Muslim confession of faith, in the name of God the Compassionate, the Merciful, dating from 1723. The inscription was added during the reign of Sultan Ahmed III. The tile panels on either side of the door were placed during later repair work. There is a small fountain at the entrance by Suleiman I. The fountain was used not only for refreshment, but could be used to prevent others from overhearing secret conversations in this room. The fountain was also a symbol of the Sultan. The Persian inscriptions calls him the fountainhead of generosity, justice and the sea of beneficence. Gifts presented by ambassadors were placed in front of the large window in the middle of the main facade between the 2 doors. The Pisks gate to the left, meaning gift brought to a superior, is surmounted by an inscription from the reign of Mahmud II, which dates from 1810. Behind the audience chamber on the eastern side is the dormitory of the Expeditionary Force. 3rd Courtyard. Dormitory of the Expeditionary Force. The dormitory of the Expeditionary Force now houses the Imperial Wardrobe collection with a valuable costume collection of about 2,500 garments, the majority precious kaftans of the sultans and uniforms worked in silver and gold thread. It also houses a collection of 360 ceramic objects. The dormitory was constructed under Sultan Murad IV in 1635. The building was restored by Sultan Ahmed III in the early 18th century. The dormitory is vaulted and is supported by 14 columns. Adjacent to the dormitory, located northeast, is the Conqueror's Pavilion. 3rd Courtyard. Conqueror's Pavilion. The Conqueror's Pavilion, also called the Conqueror's Kiosk and the Arcade of the Pavilion in front, is one of the pavilions built under Sultan Mehmed II and one of the oldest buildings inside the palace. It was built in 1460. When the palace was first constructed, and was also used to store works of art and treasure. It houses the imperial treasury. The pavilion originally consisted of 3 rooms, a terrace overlooking the Sea of Marmara, a basement and adjoining hammam, or Turkish bath. It consists of 2 floors raised on a terrace above the garden, built at the top of the promontory on a cliff with a magnificent view from its porch on the Sea of Marmara and the Bosporus. The lower floor consisted of service rooms, while the upper floor was a suite of 4 apartments and a large loggia with double arches. The first 2 rooms are covered with a dome of considerable height. All the rooms open onto the 3rd courtyard through a monumental arcade. The colonnaded portico on the side of the garden is connected to each of the 4 halls by a door of imposing height. The capitals of the imposing capitals are shrunken Ionic in form and date probably from the 18th century. Third courtyard. Conqueror's Pavilion. Imperial Treasury. The Imperial Treasury is a vast collection of works of art, jewelry, heirlooms of sentimental value and money belonging to the Ottoman dynasty. Since the palace became a museum, the same rooms have been used to exhibit these treasures. Most of the objects in the imperial treasury consisted of gifts, spoils of war, or pieces produced by palace craftsmen. The chief treasurer was responsible for the imperial treasury. Upon their accession to the throne, it was customary for the sultans to pay a ceremonial visit to the treasury. The objects exhibited in the imperial treasury today are a representative selection of its contents, which mainly consist of jeweled objects made of gold and other precious materials. Among the many treasuries that are on exhibition in 4 adjoining rooms, the first room houses one of the armoires of Sultan Mustafa III, consisting of an iron coat of mail decorated with gold and encrusted with jewels, his gilded sword and shield and gilded stirrups. The next display shows several Quran covers belonging to the sultans, decorated with pearls. The ebony throne of Murad IV is inlaid with nacre and ivory. The golden Indian music box, with a gilded elephant on top, dates from the 17th century. In other cabinets are looking glasses decorated with rare gems, precious stones, emeralds and cut diamonds. The second room houses the Kapi dagger. The golden hilt is ornamented with 3 large emeralds, topped by a golden watch with an emerald lid. The golden sheath is covered with diamonds and enamel. In 1747, the Sultan Mahmud I had this dagger made for Nader Shah of Persia, but the Shah was assassinated in connection with a revolt before the emissary had left the Ottoman Empire's boundaries, and so the Sultan retained it. This dagger gained more fame as the object of the heist depicted of the film Kapi. Only 100 of the 10,000 miniatures are on display at any time. In the middle of the second room stands the walnut throne of Ahmed I, inlaid with nacre and tortoise shell, built by Siddiqar Mimitiga. Below the baldachin hangs a golden pendant with a large emerald. The next displays show the ostentatious aigrettes of the sultans and their horses, studded with diamonds, emeralds and rubies. A jade bowl, shaped like a vessel, was a present of Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. The most eye-catching jewel in the third room is the spoonmaker's diamond, set in silver and surrounded in 2 ranks with 49 cut diamonds. Among the exhibits are 2 large golden candle holders, each weighing 48 kilograms and mounted with 6,666 cut diamonds, a present of Sultan Abdulmajid I to the Kaaba in the holy city of Mecca. They were brought back to Istanbul shortly before the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the loss of control over Mecca. The golden ceremonial Bayram throne, mounted with tourmalines, was made in 1585 by order of the Vizier Ibrahim Pasha and presented to Sultan Murad III. This throne would be set up in front of the Gate of Felicity on special audiences. The throne of Sultan Mahmud I is the centerpiece of the fourth room. This golden throne in Indian style, decorated with pearls and emeralds, was a gift of the Persian ruler Nader Shah in the 18th century. Another exhibit shows the forearm and the hand of Saint John the Baptist, set in a golden covering. Several displays show an assembly of flintlock guns, swords, spoons, all decorated with gold and jewels. Of special interest is the golden shrine that used to contain the cloak of the Prophet Muhammad. Third courtyard. Conqueror's Pavilion. Imperial Treasury. Spoonmaker's Diamond. The Spoonmaker's Diamond is a 86 carats, 17G, pear-shaped diamond which is considered the pride of the Imperial Treasury exhibitions at the Kapi Palace Museum and its most valuable single exhibit. Considered the fourth largest diamond of its kind in the world, it is kept under conditions of high security. Set in silver, surrounded by a double row of 39 old mine-cut diamonds, brilliants, and well spotlighted, it hangs in a glass case on the wall of the third room in Imperial Treasury section of Kapi's Conqueror's Pavilion, where it is clearly the most eye-catching jewel. These surrounding separate brilliance give it the appearance of a full moon lighting a bright and shining sky amidst the stars, providing an additional beauty to the Spoonmaker's Diamond and increasing its value by as much. Again, the brilliants are considered to have been ordered or arranged either by Ali Pasha or by Sultan Mahmud II, though this, as all other details of the diamond's origins, is doubtful and disputed. Notwithstanding the many other treasures of gold, silver, rubies and emeralds of the Kapi Palace treasury, the Spoonmaker's Diamond is said to have drawn the adoring, amazed looks of countless imperial favorites, queens and mothers of sultans. Third courtyard. Miniature and portrait gallery. Adjacent to the north of the Imperial Treasury lays the Pages Dormitory, which has been turned into the miniature and portrait gallery. On the lower floor is a collection of important calligraphies and miniatures. In the displays, one can see old and very precious Qurans, 12th–17th century, hand-painted and handwritten in Kufic, and also a Bible from the 4th century, written in Arabic. A priceless item of this collection is the first world map by the Turkish Admiral Piri Reis, 1513. The map shows parts of the western coasts of Europe and North Africa with reasonable accuracy, and the coast of Brazil is also easily recognizable. The upper part of the gallery contains 37 portraits of different sultans, most of which are copies since the original paintings are too delicate to be publicly shown. The portrait of Mehmed II was painted by the Venetian painter Gentile Bellini. Other precious Ottoman miniature paintings that are either kept in this gallery, the Palace Library or in other parts are the Hunurnum, Sahansanum, the Sari albums, Siranabi, Surname-i Humayun, Surname-i Vebi, and the Suleimanum among many others. Third courtyard. Miniature and portrait gallery. Quran. The Quran, literally meaning, a recitation, is the central religious text of Islam, which Muslims consider the verbatim word of God, Allah in Arabic, and the final testament, following the Old and New Testaments. It is regarded widely as the finest piece of literature in the Arabic language. The Quran is divided into 114 surahs, otherwise referred as chapters, of unequal length which are classified either as Meccan or Medinan depending upon their place and time of revelation. Muslims believe the Quran to be verbally revealed through Angel Gabriel from God to Muhammad gradually over a period of approximately 23 years beginning in 610 Common Era, when Muhammad was 40. And concluding in 632 Common Era, the year of his death. Muslims further believe that the Quran was precisely memorized, recited and exactly written down by Muhammad's companions, Sahaba, after each revelation was dictated by him. Third Courtyard. Miniature and Portrait Gallery. Piri-Reis Map. The Piri-Reis map is a pre-modern world map compiled in 1513 from military intelligence by the Ottoman Turkish admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis. The half of the map that survives shows the western coasts of Europe and North Africa and the coast of Brazil with reasonable accuracy. Various Atlantic islands including the Azores and Canary Islands are depicted, as is the mythical island of Antillia and possibly Japan. The historical importance of the map lies in its demonstration of the extent of exploration of the New World by approximately 1510, perhaps before others. It used 10 Arabian sources, 4 Indian maps sourced from Portuguese and 1 map of Columbus. The map is the extant western third of a world map drawn on gazelle skin, with various dimensions reported. These discrepancies of the dimensions are largely due to the damaged corner. The surviving portion primarily details the western coast of Africa and the eastern coast of South America. The map was signed by Piri-Reis, an Ottoman admiral, geographer and cartographer. It was presented to Ottoman Sultan Selim I in 1517. Third Courtyard. In Daron Library. The neoclassical Daron Library, also known as Library of Sultan Ahmed III, is located directly behind the audience chamber, Arzadasi, in the center of the third court. It was built on the foundations of the earlier Havuzlu kiosk by the royal architect Mimar Bisiraga in 1719 on orders of Ahmed III for use by officials of the royal household. The colonnade of this earlier kiosk now probably stands in front of the present treasury. The library is a beautiful example of Ottoman architecture of the 18th century. The exterior of the building is faced with marble. The library has the form of a Greek cross with a domed central hall and 3 rectangular bays. The fourth arm of the cross consists of the porch, which can be approached by a flight of stairs on either side. Beneath the central arch of the portico is an elaborate drinking fountain with niches on each side. The building is set on a low basement to protect the precious books of the library against moisture. The walls above the windows are decorated with 16th and 17th century Iznik tiles of variegated design. The central dome and the vaults of the rectangular bays have been painted. The decoration inside the dome and vaults are typical of the so-called Tulip period, which lasted from 1703 to 1730. The books restored and cupboards built into the walls. The niche opposite the entrance was the private reading corner of the Sultan. The library contained books on theology, Islamic law and similar works of scholarship in Ottoman Turkish, Arabic and Persian. The library collection consisted of more than 3,500 manuscripts. Some are fine examples of inlay work with nacre and ivory. Today these books are kept in the Mosque of the Agas, which is located to the west of the library. One of the most important items there is the so-called Kapi manuscript, a copy of the Quran from the time of the third Caliph Uthman ibn Affan, who was one of the companions of Islamic prophet Muhammad and played a major role in early Islamic history. Third Courtyard. Mosque of the Agas. The Mosque of the Agas, Agalar Jami, is the largest mosque in the palace. It is also one of the oldest constructions, dating from the 15th century during the reign of Mehmed II. The Sultan, the Agas and pages would come here to pray. The mosque is aligned in a diagonal line in the courtyard to make the minbar, a pulpit, and the mosque face Mecca. In 1928 the books of the Ingdaran Library, among other works, were moved here as the Palace Library, housing a collection of about 13,500 Turkish, Arabic, Persian and Greek books and manuscripts, collected by the Ottomans. Located next to the mosque to the northeast is the Imperial Portraits collection. Third Courtyard. Privy Chamber. The Privy Chamber houses the Chamber of the Sacred Relics, which includes the Pavilion of the Holy Mantle. The chamber was constructed by Sinan under the reign of Sultan Murad III. It was used to house offices of the Sultan. It houses what are considered to be the most sacred relics of the Muslim world: the cloak of the Prophet Muhammad, 2 swords, a bow, 1 tooth, a hair of his beard, his battle sabers, an autographed letter and other relics which are known as the Sacred Truss. Several other sacred objects are on display, such as the swords of the first 4 caliphs, the staff of Moses, the turban of Joseph and the carpet of the daughter of Muhammad. Even the Sultan and his family were permitted entrance only once a year, on the 15th day of Ramadan, during the time when the palace was a residence. Now any visitor can see these items, although in very dim light to protect the relics, and many Muslims make a pilgrimage for this purpose. The arcade of the Chamber of the Holy Mantle was added in the reign of Murad III, but was altered when the circumcision room was added. Third Courtyard. Privy Chamber. Harem. The imperial harem occupied one of the sections of the private apartments of the Sultan. It contained more than 400 rooms. The harem was home to the Sultan's mother, the Valida Sultan, the concubines and wives of the Sultan, and the rest of his family, including children and their servants. The harem consists of a series of buildings and structures, connected through hallways and courtyards. Every service team and hierarchical group residing in the harem had its own living space clustered around a courtyard. The number of rooms is not determined, with probably over 100, of which only a few are open to the public. These apartments, dairs, were occupied respectively by the harem eunuchs, the chief harem eunuch, the concubines, the queen mother, the sultan's consorts, the princes and the favorites. There was no trespassing beyond the gates of the harem, except for the sultan, the queen mother, the sultan's consorts and favorites, the princes and the concubines, as well as the eunuchs guarding the harem. The harem wing was only added at the end of the 16th century. Third Courtyard. Hall of the Ablution Fountain. The hall of the ablution fountain, also known as sofa with fountain, was renovated after the harem fire of 1666. This second Great Fire took place on 24 July 1665. This space was an entrance hall into the harem, guarded by the harem eunuchs. The Buyukbanis in the Selkapaisi, which connected the harem, the privy garden, the mosque of the harem eunuchs and the Tower of Justice from where the Sultan watched the deliberations of the Imperial Council, led to this place. The walls are riveted with 17th-century Qataha tiles. The horse block in front of the mosque served the Sultan to mount his horse, and the sitting benches were for the guards. The fountain that gives the space its name was moved and is now in the pool of the Privy Chamber of Murad III. On the left is the small mosque of the Black Eunuchs. The tiles in watery green, dirty white and middle blue all date from the 17th century, reign of Mehmed IV. Their design is of a high artistic level, but the execution is of minor quality compared to 16th century tiles, and the paint on these tiles blurs. Third courtyard. Courtyard of the eunuchs. Another door leads to the courtyard of the Black Eunuchs, with their apartments on the left side. At the end of the court is the apartment of the Black Chief Eunuch, the fourth high-ranking official in the official protocol. In between is the school for the imperial princes, with precious tiles from the 17th and 18th centuries and gilded wainscoting. At the end of the court is the main gate to the harem. The narrow corridor on the left side leads to the apartments of the odalisks, white slaves given as a gift to the Sultan. Many of the eunuchs' quarters face this courtyard, which is the first one of the harem, since they also acted as guards under the command of the chief harem eunuch. The spaces surrounding this courtyard were rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1665. The complex includes the dormitory of the harem eunuchs behind the portico, the quarters of the chief harem eunuch and the school of princes, as well as the gentlemen-in-waiting of the Sultan, and the sentry post next to it. The main entrance gate of the harem and the gate of the Kushain connected the Ingdaran court leads out into the Kushain door. The dormitories of the harem eunuchs date to the 16th century. They are arranged around an inner courtyard in 3 stories. The inscription on the facade of the dormitory includes the deeds of trust of the Sultans Mustafa IV, Mahmud II, and Abdulmajid I dating from the 19th century. The rooms on the upper stories were for novices, and those below overlooking the courtyard were occupied by the eunuchs who had administrative functions. There is a monumental fireplace revetted with the 18th century Qataha tiles at the far end. The chief harem eunuch's apartment adjacent to the dormitory contains a bath, living rooms and bedrooms. The school room of the princes under the control of the chief harem eunuch was on the upper story. The walls were revetted with 18th century European tiles with Baroque decorations. Third courtyard. Courtyard of the Sultan's consorts and concubines. The courtyard of the Sultan's consorts and the concubines was constructed at the same time as the courtyard of the eunuchs in the middle of the 16th century. It underwent restoration after the 1665 fire and is the smallest courtyard of the harem. The porticoed courtyard is surrounded by baths, a laundry fountain, a laundry, dormitories, the apartments of the Sultan's chief consort and the apartments of the stewardesses. The three independent tiled apartments with fireplaces overlooking the Golden Horn were the quarters where the consorts of the Sultan lived. These constructions covered the site of the courtyard in the late 16th century. At the entrance to the quarters of the Queen Mother, wall frescoes from the late 18th century depict landscapes, reflecting the Western influence. The staircase, called the 40 Steps, leads to the hospital of the harem, the dormitories of the concubines at the basement of the harem and harem gardens. Third courtyard. Courtyard of the favorites. The courtyard of the favorites forms the last section of the harem and overlooks a large pool and the boxwood garden. The courtyard was expanded in the 18th century by the addition of the interval and favorites apartments. The apartment of the Sultan's favorite consort along with the Golden Road and the Mabane section at the ground floor also included the hall with the mirrors. This was the space where Abdul Hamid I lived with his harem. The wooden apartment is decorated in the Rococo style. The favorites of the Sultan were conceived as the instruments of the perpetuation of the dynasty and the harem organization. When the favorites became pregnant, they assumed the title and powers of the official consort of the Sultan. Third courtyard. Golden Road. The Golden Road is a narrow passage that forms the axis of the harem, dating from the 15th century. It extends between the courtyard of the harem eunuch and the privy chamber. The Sultan used this passage to pass to the harem, the privy chamber and the Sofa-i-Humayun, the imperial terrace. The courtyard of the Queen Mother, the courtyard of the chief consort of the Sultan, the apartments of the princes, and the apartments of the Sultan are open to this passage. The walls are painted a plain white color. It is believed that the attribute, golden, is due to the Sultan's throwing of golden coins to be picked up by the concubines at festive days, although this is disputed by some scholars.